Em 5 segundos, mais uma transmissão de conhecimento do Centro Universitário Internacional Uninter.
Olá, sejam todos muito bem-vindos.
Hello, welcome to our special class, our special live to celebrate the World Leisure Day, an initiative for the World Leisure Society. I'm Marco Ruiz, and the coordinator of the Department of Culture and Physical Language. I'm here with Professor Rafael to present a very special topic, the perspective of leisure for management for a better society. We have guests from Australia, the US, and Brazil to talk about this such an important topic. We are on YouTube, and I hope you can participate with us and enjoy this special moment of this activity. I'd like to highlight that this event is a partnership between the LAGEL together with the World Leisure Organization. I'd like to introduce Professor Rafael, who's going to be here with us, with our guest at such an important time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special day. I'm going to be here with you. I'll be connecting with you using our chat. For those who are in Brazil, it's evening now, and we're going to have some interactions with our chat box. So please send your comments, your questions, because we are going to have a discussion, a Q&A session between our speakers. Thank you, Rafael. Before we start our speakers with our special guest, I'd like to invite our professor, Dr. Dinamara Machado, director of the School of Education and Languages, who is gonna give you a special message. Thank you, Professor Marco Ruiz, for the invitation. It's great to be here with you. We'll experience the World Leisure Day again. But look, you who are participating, have you ever stopped to think that leisure does not mean to have a medal? Doesn't mean that you need to be part of a running group. It's not that. Leisure doesn't mean an obligation. It's not because your friend does it that you have to do it. Leisure has been created so we can understand that we don't need to feel guilty about doing nothing. Leisure is bring lead time for us. It's awaken. It's I don't know. It's bringing an awakening to our mind. If leisure is picking up a book and reading for a while, getting your bike, who's not a super fancy bike, but going for a ride around the city or being part of a group. If your leisure means swimming in the morning, but it's you, it's not an obligation. Leisure must provide us freedom, and that's why it must be, so that human beings feel good about their bodies, their minds, and faith is globalized and competitive world that we live in. So be sure that it's part of your day, but not as an obligation, but the freedom to enjoy leisure without guilt. Professor Marcos Witt, I'm sure that you, with our international speakers and our teachers, will have several activities, and indeed, you're going to have a culture of leisure. Enjoy your event. Thank you. Great, Professor. Awesome words, very inspiring, and I hope that it is a message of what expect us today. So to start our presentations, our guest, we have a very special guest here representing the perspective of leisure in Brazil. Professor Antonio Carlos Bramante, and scholar, and who who's also the author of this book, who talks about management, leisure, and sport. So for us, he's also part of our study group, who is part of this partnership. Professor Bramante, please, if you make yourself at home. We hope that you can have an awesome time with you in our discussion. So thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. But we're going to have people from different times of the day. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My words today is to thank you all. I'd like to thank on behalf of Dr. Dinamara, who has sent us this inspiring message, to thank Uninter, and which today has the who is allowing us to have this event, allowing this structure for this event, to our guests, our dear John Tower, Joanne, and everyone who is here with us, especially those who are online in this 5th edition of the World Leisure Day provided by the Global Leisure Organization. Here I'm going to call it the WLA. It's nothing new. In 2010, there was a Congress, and this idea started in 2018 when the Congress happened here in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, where the group started to rethink putting everything in practice. Because the WLA was about to have the 7-year anniversary, this idea gained some strength, and in 2021, with together with the 16th leisure conference that was happening in China, we celebrate our first World Leisure Day. And the idea was to work internally, the WLO, especially their excellent centers, and externally as having a role of advocacy. So I like to say that we are starting at UNESCO so we can be acknowledged as an official day. So finally, it's important to highlight this advocacy approach as leisure being a right for everyone. It's important for quality of life. Since the first edition that we had in 2021, the group of special interest in leisure management, in partnership with LAJAO, has participated actively in celebrating the World Leisure Day. So once again, thank you, and I'm going to pass the floor to our first guest, Dr. Joanne Zimmerman. She should be here with me somewhere. I cannot see her now.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Joanne, are you there? I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself very briefly, because what I have prepared here somehow has disappeared. So if you can introduce yourself, that would be great. And you have the floor.
Okay, well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me as part of this panel today. I've been enthusiastically preparing for it. My colleague John Tower and I have sort of collaborated a bit so that we give you two different viewpoints of what we've been working on. I wanted to start by saying that I've worked in the field of recreation and leisure since I was 16 years old. I started as a day camp counselor, and I worked my way through many part-time and seasonal positions, as many people do in this industry. I worked 15 years full-time in the public sector as a recreation program supervisor and manager, during which time I got a master's in business administration. I then left and got a PhD, and since then I've been fortunate enough to travel the world and learn so much more about what recreation can be, as opposed to perhaps I used to think what it should be, and now I realize what it can be is more important. I have a passion for recreation, the field of recreation, which has not waned since I was an undergraduate student. I firmly believe that recreation has the power to change people's lives. I know it's changed mine, and everything I do is in an effort to share that passion with other people. So, what is leisure management? I'm going to be kind of laying the groundwork here for John and I. So, leisure management is a term that's inclusive of a range of recreation, sport, tourism, and event management issues. It's the means by which organizations manipulate resources to deliver leisure programs, facilities, and services to stakeholders and to the general community. Tasks and roles and management functions that a manager might do include things such as human resource management, information technology, fiscal management and budgeting, public relations or marketing, program practices, resource planning, and the evaluation of recreation, sport, and leisure services. So, having said that, what is the role of a leisure manager? Basically, a leisure manager or administrator is concerned with how multiple programs work together for the benefit of a community or a targeted group of users. So to me, we have to figure out how to do things that are going to benefit those people we're trying to serve. And so for me, that means striving for a certain level of professionalism within the industry. I learned a long time ago that if you just sort of keep doing what everybody's been doing the same time all around, it's not going to work. So you really need to stay on top of trends and issues. So when I talk about how to be a professional, how do you do that? Well, I look at several things. One is continuing education. It's impossible to consider that you will know everything you need to be an effective professional when you complete your coursework. The industry is so broad, and each sector or agency within it has their own unique way of accomplishing their work in and for the communities they serve. Attending conferences is one really great way to get new information and meet new people, which leads me to the third one, which is networking. Getting to know and meet with colleagues in similar roles, whether in your specific region or somewhere else in the world, can help you deal with challenges and changes you face in your own organization and workplace. Read everything, and I mean everything. Just be very prolific in looking at everything that even strikes even part of a chord in your heart and soul. Because you can use just about everything you read in some way, shape, or form to improve you. And then the last part is to join professional organizations. And I see this as key. I see this as a key way that I became a better professional, from being a freshman, a first-year university student, all the way to where I am now, having been in the field for more years than I care to count. So let's see what that looks like and why it's important. So I really believe that professional organizations matter. So first level is local or regional. These are people who are in your immediate area. One of the best things that I learned when I was doing my internship as an undergraduate student is to get involved with the local group of professionals. And I got involved in that as an intern. I stayed active in that throughout my entire career, and I still am active in my local group here in Texas. They're the people who work in your immediate vicinity and are usually closely available to you. Also, a state level organization is very important. Again, I've been active and been members of a state organization since my university days, first in Illinois and now in Texas. And I will say the conferences are great. The people you meet are even better. And when I need something, I mean, I teach at a university right now, and when I need something, I know that I can reach out to my colleagues across the state and find out what's happening, because I teach applied courses and I want current information. And so I can send out an email, survey people, ask questions, and know right away what's going on. National organizations are also important because you get a bigger scope beyond just where you are. I managed most of my professional career in the state of Illinois, and it's a very, very good state for recreation. But it was also got to the point of we're good, we're great, we're the best, we're the only. And that's not true. Getting to meet people from other states only improves your ability to manage appropriately. And then international is like the icing on the cake. Getting to meet people from around the world, get perspectives on how they manage things is just really, really fantastic and something that I enjoy tremendously. Obviously, I'm here talking to you, most of you in Brazil at the current time. All right, so let's look at, I'm going to give you some examples of these organizations. So Texas Recreation and Park Society is my state association right now that I'm affiliated with. They, on their website, they say they serve as a clearinghouse of information and resources to help with a wide range of challenges facing park, recreation, and leisure service professionals. These include programming, grant and aid applications, coordinated events, promoting projects, advocacy and legislative awareness, job postings, and professional development and training. So if we look at their vision, this echoes exactly what their description says. Their vision is to be a champion for engaged communities, wellness lifestyles, and green spaces. And their mission, a little more focused, they advance the quality of life industry. How do you like that term for what we do? The quality of life industry through connections, advocacy, resources, and education. And their acronym that they use so we can all remember that is CARE. All right, let's look at the national organization that I belong to. This is National Recreation and Park Association. Their job is to catalyze the power of parks and recreation to deliver transformative community and environmental benefits by championing the profession to lead through education, advocacy, and partnerships. To do this work, they have 3 pillars that guide them. The first is health and well-being, and their job there is creating healthy and connected and thriving communities. Now, they have a whole bunch of initiatives under that, but the top 3 they offer are something new that they've recently started called Community Wellness Hubs, which is a toolkit for advancing community health and well-being through parks and recreation. They also have developed a youth sports framework to help communities engage in a more meaningful way through sport. And then they also have a health impact evaluation framework. I hope you don't hear my dogs barking, I'm sorry. The second pillar is equity. Equity is where they work on fostering connection and belonging. And there are 3 top initiatives they have under there are quick guides that offer practical steps for meaningful change within a community. They offer an equity practice resource library where you can go and look at best practices. And they also offer an equity language guide to help you when you're doing your promotional information. The third pillar is environmental resilience. And this has to do with stewardship and expanding healthier parks and natural spaces for current and future generations. The 3 things that they work on there are workforce development. We realize that universities are not graduating enough students to fill the positions that are going to open due to retirement in coming years. Therefore, we're reaching out and trying to offer opportunities for youth in rural communities, especially to get experience in our industry. We also work on sustainability in practice, so providing tools, resources, and knowledge to advance equitable sustainability practices and plans. And finally, and I think this is just kind of a fun one, which is why I threw in there, they actually are working to promote parks for pollinators. So offering green spaces so that pollinators will come in and we can help the natural environment in that way. The last one is the international organization which I'm affiliated with and how I got involved in this webinar, and that's the World Leisure Organization. And the World Leisure Organization has 4 strategic working lines that you can be involved in. The first one is research. Dr. John and myself and Dr. Bramante, we are all co-leaders of the Leisure Management Special Interest Group. And we are involved in working with colleagues around the world to explore new research opportunities. The second working line is education. And we offer a number of things for that. My university, and also one in Brazil, Sao Paulo University, are centers of excellence where our universities have been judged to offer good educational opportunities for our students. We have World Leisure offers field school opportunities for students to attend World Leisure Congress ahead of time to work on special projects. There's also global leisure debates and webinars and study tours. The third working line is knowledge transfer. This happens through our journal, World Leisure Journal, the newsletter, and then events like the World Leisure Congress, which is coming up in Amsterdam in August. And the fourth working line is advocacy, and that is accomplished through the Charter for Leisure, position papers that board members and others write, and then also a World Leisure Cities initiative recognizing communities of excellence. So, in conclusion, leisure management is a foundation required to deliver quality leisure, recreation, and sports services. A good leisure manager must be aware of current issues important to the profession if they want to make a difference in the community they serve. And I would also go so far as to say, without professional leaders in leisure management positions, many programs would fail to achieve the hoped for outcomes, money would be wasted, and facilities might fall into ruin. And we would not want to waste all those resources in any of our communities. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention. If you need more information, I have my email up there. You can also reach out to the Leisure Management Special Interest Group and the World Leisure Organization.
Muito bem, muito obrigado. Eu acabei de ser
Thank you
comunicado
so
aqui
much. I
pela organização
just heard
e até que a
that
doutora
Dr. Joanne,
conecte tem
uh,
na página
you can
de
connect
tradução, eu
at the
devo, então,
translation
fazer
page. So I'm
as
going to
primeiras
do
perguntas em
the
inglês.
first questions in English
So,
until you can connect to the
Joanne, I
translation
think
pen.
I'll have to ask you in English due to technical problems here that will be solved in a minute. So if I may, I would like first of all, since I did not introduce you at first, Dr. Joanne, as she likes to be called, her name is Joanne Zimmerman Samosa, is currently an associate professor, specialist in recreation studies, and curriculum development coordinator in the Department of Health and Human Performance at Texas State University in the United States. She holds a bachelor's degree in recreation parks from Western Illinois University and master's degree from Olivet Nazarene University and Doctor of Philosophy from Clemson University in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. As she mentioned, even before she started, she had a great exposure a different experience, professionally speaking. And now, if I may, do you hear me, Joanne? Well?
Yes.
Okay. I have a first question to you because, as you know, after 5 years dialoguing about comparative leisure management, if I may say this way, I think on your second slide, I note here that you talk about management functions. Very interesting, the responsibilities such as human resource, information technology, fiscal management, budgeting, public relations, program practice, resource planning, and evaluation of recreation, sport, and leisure service. Now, in this list, professions, the last one, which is evaluation of recreation, sports, and leisure service, how it is put in practice in USA, at least within your the places that you work, because normally, at least here in Brazil, we tend to plan very little and we spend a lot of time doing things, and we're so busy that unfortunately you don't have enough time to evaluate. How is this balance in your country?
Well, I think in my country, we actually spend a lot of time planning. We spend a lot of time doing. When it comes to evaluation, it depends on the size of the agency, to be honest with you. A larger agency will have the time, the money, the resources, the people to do very good evaluation. Smaller agencies struggle with it a bit. Sort of the default is to use customer service evaluations following programs. Many agencies use the exact same evaluation for every single program. And I think you might agree, and John Tower would agree as well, that that is not necessarily the best way to do it. That trying to do something that's more in tune with what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, ideally, you would have goals and objectives for each of your programs or services, and your evaluation would hinge on whether or not you've met those goals and objectives, which by its very nature would suggest you need different evaluation approaches, forms, etc., for each program. I understand the value in having some questions exactly the same across all programs so that there's some comparative data across, but I think you have to have specialty questions for each of them as well. And I know that as a professional, I use those evaluations all the time to improve what I was doing. I would also use them as a means of floating new ideas. So for example, I was in charge of summer day camps, and I had a lot of parents saying, we want busing. We want you to bus our kids. We pick them up and take them to camp. So I thought, well, all right, I'm not just going to say yes, but let me investigate. And so when I did my summer evaluation, on the back, it said, we've had requests for busing. Is this something that interests you? If yes, how much would you be willing to pay for it? A number of people said, yes, we were interested. And all of them said, we don't want to pay any extra for it. Well, if we were going to pay for buses, we were going to have to cut something else out. We chose not to do busing. Nobody was willing to pay for it. That's a luxury. Our town was only 4 square miles. We really didn't need to provide transportation. We had camps in enough different places. People could actually walk to camp. They didn't need a bus. So it was something that, all right, you put it out there, I'll ask. But we also changed length of days for day camps. We changed length of sessions. Everybody used to be the same, and then different age groups. We went 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 6-week sessions, depending on the type of camp and the population we were serving, based on what I was hearing in those survey evaluations at the end of the season.
Well, thank you very much. I think we still have time for one more question, if I may.
Yes.
I also observe in your slide number 3 that you mentioned striving for a certain level of professionalism within the industry.
Yeah.
At least here in Brazil, we have a lot of work being done by volunteers. So, and we see a lot of amateurs. Amateurs, as they love what they do, but not necessarily they are prepared to do this work. And now, how do you work with your volunteer people? Because I remember in the US when I studied there, that YMCA, for instance, had a lot of volunteers. And so how do you prepare this group of people to work in a leisure management? How do you manage volunteers?
Yeah. Well, I would say in most cases, there's a manager overseeing all those volunteers. And many organizations who rely on volunteers here have gotten very, very good at training them and providing comprehensive training programs so that they can, and having different levels of volunteers so that when somebody first starts out, they're maybe being an assistant to somebody. They, you know, have different types of things. As they're longer, they do all of the training. Then they can move up, and then they maybe start overseeing other volunteers. And so it's kind of a ladder system, but it is a training program that the YMCA has an excellent training program for their volunteers, and many other organizations have gotten very good at it as well. But they do the same thing for all their seasonal staff and their part-time staff. So it's really just dependent on the agency. The agencies I've always worked for, their expectation was excellence in service delivery. And in order to provide excellent service, you had to have trained people in order to do it. You couldn't take that to chance, right? So it was just a matter of organizing that training up front, having a process, and making sure people followed through on it.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Joanne, for your consideration, your answer to this type of questions, because we're trying to make a connection with the reality in Brazil and what you have experienced and studied in US. Well,
absolutely.
Thank you very much. Now I think I would give the floor to Marcos, Dr. Marcos Ruiz, please.
Olá, professor Bramante. Muito obrigado, professora
Oh,
Joanne.
Professor Bramante, thank you, Professor Joanne, for your comment. I think that Professor Bramante has mentioned, I think that we can design some sort of scenario on what we have found in Brazil in terms of leisure management. I'm not going to take much time about the participation of our comments, and I apologize, but there we have echo. Professor Rafael, you have the floor. So thank you so much. We have many people participating. Professor Joanne, many people said that they didn't listen to your dog, so don't worry about that. And I heard many positive comments, but please send questions. It's very interesting to have this debate. Of course, people wait for all speakers to say what they have to say, but later we are going to have a debate, so it's important to have all these questions on our hand. So I'm going to throw you a challenge. Professor Bramante said that in Brazil it's evening, Professor John is Auburn, it's morning, Professor Joanne is a little bit earlier than us, so we have people from all over the world. So I would like to know where you practice your leisure and sports. So I'm going to send here in both chats, Portuguese and English. Please, you can fill the survey. So look for, if you can send an image where we practice your leisure. Professor Bramante has mentioned, or Professor Joanne has, regardless of your type of leisure, please send us the image, the city, the state, so we can have a very nice fall here. That's how it's going to look for. Here I have some examples. Jardim Botânico in Curitiba, Paraná, Brazil, Tambaú, João Pessoa in Brazil, Parque Ibirapuera in São Paulo. So let's have the contribution from all of you. Here at the bottom, you can click on plus and add your image where you practice your sport, your leisure, and then you're going to share this later on. Professor Marcus, you have the floor. Thank you so much, Rafael. Now, let's see where we have your preferred space, and allow us to understand the experience that you practice in your space. Professor Bramante mentioned he was talking about the World Leisure Organization. Before we start our next as presentation, if you can clarify in some details how our participants can register or can participate more actively in the World Leisure Organization. You're going to share in our chat box the possibility that you can have so you can register. Professor Bramante, you have the floor. You can talk a little bit more about the World Leisure Organization and introduce our next guest. Thank you so much, Professor Marcus. Thank you for the opportunity, because one of the strategies that we have used in these events is to try to encourage people who are watching us to be part of the World Leisure Organization. This organization exists since 1951-52, and it brings together people, projects, research, interest groups of interest, excellent centers, everything available on its website, and we can access for free. And we can also be members of this association, again, for free. So here we have the invitation. I'm sure that we are going to have the direct link so you can become a member of the World Leisure Organization. And there you can be part of the special interest group for leisure management, if that's your interest, and you can register so you can participate in our next webinars. Okay? That's it, Professor Marcus, from my side. Perfect. Thank you, Professor Bramante. And again, this year we have the World Conference. We can have more information about this event on our website. So please, Professor, feel free to introduce John, and you're going to have our guest speaker. Excellent. It's the first time that I speak to Dr. John Tower in Portuguese. Our conversations are always in English, so I will feel free, more at easy to talk about Dr. John Tower. He works in the leisure industry for more than 40 years with a specific interest in the participation and providing service in sports and leisure. He's currently an honorary researcher at the Sport Institute at the University of Victoria in Auburn, Australia. He's involved in the academia in what has to do with sports, has been driven by the interest in the ability of this leisure experience, has contributed to the quality of life in his community. He's been involved in education and undergrad and postgraduate courses until 2016, when he finally retired as a senior professor. He has a specific interest in working with students and offering different types of experience and learning so that he can help them to discover the value of sports and leisure to provide service and quality programs. Dr. Tower also works in in the academia and in the industry, sharing his experience and keeping informed and up to date in sports service and leisure. Currently, he is the chair of the group of interest, specific group of interest in leisure management of the World Leisure Organization. Dr. John Tower, once again, welcome to our debate, to the World Leisure Day, and you have the floor.
Let me try again.
Okay.
Hola, Feliz Dia Mundial de l'Azur. You've heard the extent of my attempt to speak Portuguese. So I'll share my screen and share with you some of the things that I'm want to share with you today. So my intention today is to share with you some Australian perspectives on leisure management, or how leisure management in Australia contributes to a better society. I want to thank all of the organizers for inviting me to share a few of my insights with you today. This is my second session as part of World Leisure Day. Yesterday, on Australia's World Leisure Day, I was part of a webinar that explored how leisure programs contribute to social value. I'm pleased to be involved with my wonderful colleagues in Brazil. So as I said, today I'll share with you some of my insights about how Australian leisure management is contributing to a better society. As we start, a tradition in Australia is to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. I am on Wurundjeri land in the Kulin Nation. I value the culture, relationships to country, kinship connections, and journeys of the first peoples of this land. I pay respect to the traditional owners, the traditional elders, past, present, and emerging. I also pay respect to the traditional owners of wherever you may be. So as I start, what I want to try and share with you is just a little bit about how we're organized in Australia. And so and I think it would be similar from what I know, in Brazil, and certainly similar in the USA, but it's based on the mixed economy of leisure. So we basically have, one sector is the public and government side of things. And they make a lot of investments in people's quality of life through funding and program delivery. In Australia, it's also very important for the not-for-profit sector. So a lot of community groups and organizations are integrally involved. And the last presenter, Joanne, talked about the YMCA, and the YMCA is very active here, as well as lots of other groups that are working in the not-for-profit sector. We also have a lot of private or commercial providers. And one of the things that they do is they have a wee bit different focus in terms of not only do they want to provide quality programs and services, but they also need to be able to provide some profits for whoever is the owner of that perspective. And lastly, and it's still very much the case, the most popular place for people's leisure consumption is in their own household. And so the household sector is still very important. So from my point of view, what's interesting is if you ask a consumer who provides your leisure experience for you, they probably don't even think about it. They don't even know. So if you go for a walk in a park, that's very much, that park is likely to be provided by the government. But if you go for a program in the park, involved in a fitness group or bird watchers or something like that, often those programs are going to be provided by the not-for-profit sector, or in other instances in the commercial sector. So my focus today with you is to be able to talk mostly about the public government sector and the not-for-profit sector. So what I want to share with you is a little bit about how we structure things here in Australia. So I want to focus on the national government's policy. They call it the Play Well strategy. Now, the Play Well strategy is Australia's sports participation strategy, developed to create great sporting environments and experiences where individuals of all ages, backgrounds, genders, and abilities can come together to access the benefits of sport. So the Play Well strategy has been designed by the sports sector for the sports sector. Now, I need to clarify something about Australia's obsession with the use of the word sport. When they say sport, they're thinking physical activity, they're thinking recreation. The sports sector, when we talk about that, is not just, people playing organized games and competitions. For example, one of the groups that I'm involved with here is Parks and Leisure Australia, and they were one of the peak organizations of park and leisure professionals who were involved in this policies development. Regardless of what we call it, we're talking about people being able to participate in things in their free time to enhance their quality of life. The Play Well strategy has six strategies designed to contribute to a better society. So one of those is actually empowering people and organizations. So they want to have the individuals who are involved in pursuits being able to make decisions that meet their needs and having systems that meet everyone's needs. They're also very focused on a second strategy is driving lifelong involvement. So they want to be able to have all ages, recognizing that we all have different needs and wants as we go through the life cycle. They're also part of the strategy with the policy is activating places and spaces. They want everyone to have safe and enjoyable environments in which to participate. Building connections, that collaborative ecosystem whereby there's the mixed economy of leisure comes into play. So those connections from a consumer's point of view is they are pursuing something gives them pleasure and is of interest to them. And the ecosystem, whether it's government or not-for-profit or a commercial group, are all collaborating to help that experience to be achieved. Equity continues to be a very important issue for us. Equity and choice are priorities. Many resources are delivered to disadvantaged sectors, but not always. And I'll share with you some of that later on in terms of some of the challenges. And lastly, we want to be able to transform cultures. We want everyone to have safe, inclusive, welcoming, and fun experiences. We also will have government policies established at state. We only have 8 states in Australia, the territories and local government. And just within my state of Victoria, we have 79 local government authorities. It's interesting to know input from an Australian colleague at our webinar yesterday mentioned that often the main reason different levels of government collaborate is to gain funding. And so all of these organizations are often involved with providing resources. And many local governments in particular, which is where most of the government resource delivery occurs, do not really worry about the policy that's coming from the national or state government until they want some of their money. And as soon as they want some of their money, they know how to come out with the weasel words that are going to get them to the resources. So how do we achieve these things? The principles are built around the 3 ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is how we are actually looking at trying to achieve better society outcomes. So to deal with diversity, we need to recognize and embrace the diversity of the Australian community. For example, in my home state of Victoria, we have approximately 7 million people who speak at home 290 different languages and have 314 different ancestries. Now, the Australian Sport Commission has recently released a guide for community groups to understand the diverse needs of our culturally and linguistically diverse communities. And they provide strategies about how you can make people from diverse backgrounds welcome. So that playbook that they've designed explains why participation in culturally and linguistically diverse people is important. They share research about what is currently happening based on scholarship. And then finally, they provide a playbook, a guideline as to how community groups can develop an action plan to guide their capacity to include diverse people in their activities. And if you contact me, and my details will be at the end of this presentation, I can provide links to some of these resources. The second element of terms of how we achieve a better society outcomes is equity. We recognize that there are a lot of disadvantaged sectors of the community, and they tend to be the ones to allocate resources to the most disadvantaged. So a lot of local government funding programs are designed to facilitate socioeconomic disadvantaged people to participate in leisure experiences. So for instance, they have family sport participation funding. So if my child wants to play football, but the cost of joining the football club, getting the right equipment, and all of those sorts of things can be quite expensive. And so many local governments have programs to provide funding to help families' children to participate in the sport. We also have funding and support to support people with specific needs, such as disabilities or older adults who are frail and things like that. We even had some programs from the state government where I'm at, which provide extra funding for families to be able to support their children to be involved in things like school camps. It's important to note, though, that federal and state government-based funding still tends to support elite sport. They may make millions of dollars to support local programs to address equity, but they provide tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to build stadiums for elite sport. This has nothing to do with equity or healthy leisure participation. It's what I refer to as just part of the sport entertainment business. And Australia does sport entertainment really well as well. All right, the last element in terms of trying to achieve a better society is through inclusion. They want us to adopt practices to design delivery part of what's going on so that people are involved. My first awareness of major inclusion initiatives was the Year of Disabled Persons in 1981. It seems like it's been a constant journey for me since then. My recent engagement with leisure managers confirms how they are really keen to include people in the delivery of leisure experiences. I was recently participating in a symposium about the development of aquatic and leisure centers, where there was an agreement that the importance of having disadvantaged sectors of the community involved in the planning and delivery of these leisure experiences. So if you want people to understand, if you want to make a facility accessible, make sure people with mobility are involved in the planning, because they could absolutely point out where things need to be done. One of the more recent initiatives in terms of inclusion is trying to include people with autism. So within the government sector, we've got a national autism strategy. Commitments include increasing accessible and sensory-friendly public and online spaces with programs and services that nurture people with autism to engage in leisure experiences, and then supporting employers to hire and retain employees with autism. Leisure managers are introducing times at leisure centers with more sensory-friendly places. For instance, they're lowering the lighting intensity. They're turning down the volume of ambient music and background noise. And they're providing training to staff to be more understanding so that they can be more inclusive. So these three sides of things, diversity, equity, inclusion, are part of the ways that Australian leisure managers are trying to create better society outcomes. Now I want to share with you some of my recent insights about how leisure management is performing on these things. I want to reinforce one of the messages that Joanne made, which is that it's important that a lot of our research is applied so academics stay connected with the profession, and it's also important for professions to remain engaged with scholarship. We need to monitor our initiatives to document shifts in thinking through time. So I want to share with you two things that we've recently explored. So one relates to leisure planning. So Katie McDonald produced a PhD about how two major aquatic and recreation centers were planned. And one of our recent articles out of that was looking at how new public management principles underpin how they would assess what they're doing. The focus is very much on efficiency and effectiveness. What that means is that planning for major aquatic and recreation centers, these cost multiple tens of millions of dollars. In fact, many are coming at a cost of $100 million these days. And most of their planning is designed on achieving financial performance, and nothing is coming out about how they provide public or social value outcomes. This remains a challenge for us in Australia. We've had in 2016, our state auditor general said they're very good at generating output measures, but not very good at identifying the sorts of outcomes. And that was something that Bramante and Joanne talked about in that conversation earlier about we don't evaluate really well. Well, if you don't plan for it in your planning stage, it's very difficult to include it in the evaluation stage. So they look at financial performance and they look at participation levels, but they're not looking at how the value it creates for a community. And this brings me to some more recent research, yet to be published. I'm optimistic it'll get through the review process. But Professor Eyvold Iversen in Denmark and I have a paper about managers' voices. We asked a range of leisure managers how they measure their performance. And the findings reinforced what we found with the leisure planning. Although they acknowledged the value of, or the importance of measuring public value or social value outcomes, the respondents indicated they're not doing it. And in many instances, they were not even aware of how they could measure public kind of value, social value. Our industry's failure to measure the public value of their performance means the focus remains on financial and participation numbers that leads neglect of the public outcomes that we could be pursuing. So we're not always achieving those social value outcomes that we can do. And again, I can provide some links to these articles for anyone that's interested. So let me finish off by talking about some of the challenges for leisure managers to achieve better society outcomes. So I'd have to say that, there are very commendable expectations. People are trying to do the right thing, but there's often very disappointing approaches. The values of society is recognized, but there's insufficient commitment to deliver these outcomes. We need to make public value, social value, these better society outcomes, a fundamental achievement in the delivery of leisure experiences. Another element of a challenge is to commit to continuous improvement. Joanne mentioned the importance of tying in with the professional associations, and we have very similar things here. But in all my discussions with leisure managers, and I've been on committees of management and boards and things like that, most of them are not including or using the concept of continuous improvement. Most managers appear to struggle to deliver their leisure experiences on a day-to-day basis, so they do not dedicate resources to improve what they do. They tick a box, as Joanne mentioned. They get customer satisfaction surveys. 80% of the people are pretty good, so we're doing okay. And the most successful managers, from my understanding, in all ranges of business, government, not-for-profits, is to encourage continuous improvement. So there's more that can be done there. I also believe that we, in Australia, and maybe we're unique in this regard, we need more industry collaboration. There tends to be what I would refer to as industry competition. So different professional organizations are actually trying to do similar things without recognizing that we are ultimately on the same team. We have similar groups to what Joanne mentioned, but there's an insufficient capacity to coordinate how we go about things. There's a scope for a more unified approach to advocate for leisure programs, facilities, and services. And we know those are part of the steps to achieving better society outcomes. Part of it is our failure to measure public community values probably contributes to the lower priority of funding for those community leisure initiatives versus elite sport. Lastly, and it has to be mentioned, Sustainability is probably the biggest challenge for all of us in the 21st century. We have recognition of the value of parks and street trees to mitigate climate change. We understand the high energy costs of providing indoor community recreation centers. Within our industry, we need to be advocating for more green spaces, more environmentally responsible infrastructure, increasing use of solar panels, using heat pumps to provide cooling and heating. These are all things that are starting to happen. We need to make all of these things normal in the delivery of leisure facilities. So I think that as we move forward, sustainability will remain as the most important challenge for the 21st century. And quite frankly, we need to do a lot better. So thank you for listening, and hopefully I welcome your comments and questions. Here's a few contact details. Two are exactly the same as in Joanne's slide, and that's my email address if you want to contact me directly. So thank you, and obrigado.
Muito obrigado, Dr. John Tower.
Thank you so much, Dr. John Tower, for your exciting presentation. Reading down a lot of things to ask you, but based on your last few slides, the challenges of leisure management and this discrepancy between the expectation of the user and the delivery of services. It's very interesting. And that's what I want to ask you. When we talk about user, we are talking about the actual user. Like in Australia, you've identified the potential user. For example, those who don't go, those that you don't find. And maybe those are the people that need the most. And this is my first question, even though there's other questions here, but we have some questions coming from the audience. And first of all, how do you deal with this discrepancy in terms of the expectation of those who actually use and those who deliver the service?
Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, we have a lot of people that are participating quite regularly. But I heard yesterday, and I've known it for years, that although Australia has a very big public image of lots of participation and lots of elite things, we're actually very, very low when it comes to physical activity participation. And so one of the challenges that you've effectively highlighted is that how do we get the people who are going to benefit the most from potential leisure participation to be involved? And one of the strategies that I'm a big proponent of is greater collaboration. So if you're working in a local community center, most of my work is with swimming pools and leisure center type settings. So if you're working at that kind of setting, if that manager is not going out and talking to community groups on a regular basis to say, this is what we do, and this is how you can become involved, then they're missing opportunities. So I really believe that we need to have more managers outreach to the group. So if you're dealing with, in my community, there's a lot of people who have Chinese background, big influx of Chinese immigrants in this part of Melbourne where I live. And they have their own community groups and their own associations. When we look who uses the aquatic and leisure centers, they're not very well represented. So I would argue that the manager needs to go and meet these people where they're at and make it clear what's provided, how they can get benefits from it, what's in it for them, and also to be able to, explain to them how they can access it. Because I remember years ago, someone was doing some work with older adults, and they said, these leisure centers offer older adult programs. And the older adults were saying, no, that's not right. These things are only offered for people who are young. It's for the young, fit people. And so you need to be helping people understand the opportunities. I would love to see the challenge, and I don't know how the industry would respond, but if everyone who is a non-participant were actually to start joining in on things, I'd love to see how busy we could become. Because what we do very well. And there's lots of really good programs and things like that going on. But as you say, we're not achieving the sorts of outcomes that we really would like to be achieving, especially with the most disadvantaged sectors.
Muito bem, muito obrigado, Dr. Tower.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tower. Now I would like to start a dialogue with Professor Marques, because we do have some questions from the audience for both of you, both of our guests here today. Professor Marques. Thank you so much, Professor. I was really happy to listen from Professor John Tower and Professor Joanne Zimmerman, but as they showed the different scenarios, I started thinking about the realities that we have here in Brazil. And maybe if you can comment on my way of thinking, and it has to do of volunteering that we have in Brazil. From the managers, the leisure management structures with more than 12,000 entities with a physical space for sports practice and leisure practice. We have a group of people that take over leisure management in a non-professional way, but they kind of become professional, and they interfere in the experience of people. And within this scenario, if you can tell me your point of view, and since it's a structure in our country where we have the different, it's difficult to change, and how we could develop competences so that this space can follow what you mentioned about solving the problems that we have in our space from a management point of view. As far as I understand, this question is to me, right? Yes. Okay. In fact, actually, I don't know. For both in Australia and the US, that they have a club structure, that have club or associations, or like private clubs that people pay to be part of them. I like to mention the experience that I had for 7 years at the ABB federations. For our guests, those are the Banco do Brasil, the Brazilian Bank Athletic Associations. And today we have around 1,000 associations or clubs, quote unquote, in Brazil. And the bank, one of their strategies when they would open a branch in the countryside, they would open a club so the families could have an environment to socialize. So throughout this time, more than 1,000 people were prepared or formed, and based on the acts of association, the acts of president of the club, quote unquote, should be a Banco do Brasil worker or a Banco do Brasil retired worker. So it's a paradox. For example, we have someone who was prepared for business to be in charge of idleness, so, or leisure. So we didn't have, it was difficult, there was no training for these people to manage these clubs or associations. And I don't see a different way but training people constantly so that we can have prepared volunteer to face the demands of those social and leisure clubs, quote unquote. But we have a problem because the management, the high management of these clubs is biased. So that becomes an environment of power. So how can we solve this problem? I don't know. I think we need a different debate to discuss only this issue. Thank you so much, Professor. Now I'd like to, Professor Rafael is going to have an interaction with us from the messages and the images that we have received from our participants. Professor Rafael, you can show the panel that we put together with our attendees. If you can share the screen, you can see how nice our wall is. We have different leisure spaces. Of course, most of the spaces that we have in Brazil are the beach. People like to go to the beach, like to go to the sun. We have a guy with a fish, a guy who went fishing. We have books. We have someone in Japan, someone playing bowling. We have a couple of people having a hot chocolate and watching TV. So again, reading. So please share your images. And I'd like to take the opportunity that we have here three such important people in this, the leisure industry. Here I have a link if you want to that I want to share with you. If you can show it again. This is the World Leisure Organization. You can register for free, add to the cart. So once we finish this live, I hope we can have more people register, more members, and we can have access to the contact of these professionals and more. So it's a great experience for those who want to learn more. And here we have the invitation. I'm going to add it to the chat. So after we have the debate, you can register and become a member, just like these other professors, our guest speakers, sorry. Thank you, Rafael. Now going back to Professor Bramante. We have some questions from our attendees. We have a group from the leisure management course participating. So now you can comment. We still have some time for our discussion. Very good, Professor Marcos. I'd like to thank you, Professor Rafael, for including this opportunity of learning more and getting to know more about leisure and sports through the World Leisure Organization. I have a question that there's a question for both our international speakers. It's Alana. She said, I have a question for both professors. How is how is the formation? How do you train these people from a university background point of view? Let's start with Joanne. If you can tell us a little bit, how does it work in the US in terms of background training at the university level?
Okay, well, we have a couple levels of university. We have community colleges who offer two-year degrees and allow people to get some basic training that way. But a lot of students go on to a four-year university degree, and that's a combination of sitting in classrooms, taking exams, those types of things, but also include, at least at my university, a lot of what we call service learning. I think in Australia, they might call it work integrated learning. But it's a way for students to get out and get involved in a community and actually engage with different populations, creating programs, initiating programs, evaluating, all with different population groups across their university degree. And along the way, we're taking students to conferences with us so that they can meet professionals. They can start engaging in that professional development. Here in Texas, there's something really unique. They also we get students involved very early in the legislative advocacy piece, and we go and go to our state legislature and go through their offices and talk to them about supporting and parks and recreation and how important it is to quality of life in Texas that they continue to fund important opportunities for their communities.
Ok, obrigado, professora Joanne. Professor
Very
John
good.
Tower.
Thank you so much, Professor Joanne. Professor John Tower, how is this training in Australia from a university background training?
Okay, thanks. That's a great question. And we as an industry have recognized that we need to do better in that regard. So I'm involved with a project that is nearing completion. So it's a work in progress at the moment. But we recognize that the park and leisure industry was not adequately connected to the higher education or post-secondary schooling arrangements. So among other things, we are creating resources to help the two collaborate, both on training so that people from industry contribute to courses, and also that students get involved with industry. As Joanne said, we call it work integrated learning here, or service training with what they have. And so there is that combination. So part of that project was to try and figure out, well, how many courses do we offer in higher education? So these are mostly university degrees in Australia. We came up with a list of over 300 courses. Now, we were very broad in what we wanted to include. So that includes things like parks. So that includes environmental science. It includes things like health or public health because of their contributions to communities' quality of life. We have a lot of programs in sport management, but we're trying to make sure that sport management understands the community leisure participation within all of that as well. And so trying to bring that connection together. So we have also, which we didn't include in the project because that's a whole nother sector, what we call, and I think Joanne referred to them as community colleges. We have technical and further education that offer up to 2-year courses, which provide people fundamental training about how to actually deliver programs or manage parks or take care of gardens and those sorts of things. And so it's a very broad sector. There's lots of opportunities, but similar to what Joanne said in her presentation, what we're finding in the industry is that we're not getting enough graduates. And so part of our project is to try and encourage young people in particular to realize there's this great news industry out there called parks and leisure that you can get involved with and be able to build a career and deliver a range of quality experiences for people.
Muito bem, obrigado, Professor John Tower.
Very good. Thank you so much, Professor John Tower. So to make your questions more dynamic, because I see some other questions coming up, I'm going to ask another question to Joanne and then another question to John Tower. So to Joanne, I'd like to ask the following. Having in mind quality of life related to leisure, public policies are more efficient to promote it. And what is the active involvement that government institutions should have, the active role that government institutions should have?
Well,
to
I think
well-being. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. So I think one of the things that people in the United States have gotten good at actually is really advocating for the connection between leisure, recreation, sport, and community health. and demonstrating how a community that has those leisure, recreation, sport opportunities available for everyone is actually a healthier community. And so they've really made that connection and tried to reinforce that connection. There's been a lot of research done here in the United States about that. And, you know, property values are higher when you live near a park. You know, there's all sorts of value that our industry can bring to a community. And at the state level here in Texas, at every state actually, but also at the national level, we actually have lobbyists, political lobbyists, who go to the government officials and say, hey, this is what you need to be paying attention to. And I think I think it's important that we all get involved in recognizing that. And I think we do a pretty good job at recognizing on a regular basis those policymakers who invest in us, who agree with us, and who put forward agenda items that reinforce the values that we're trying to present. And so I think we're doing a pretty good job. Obviously, it's not great. We're having some issues at some of our national parks right now. But hopefully those will be resolved in the near term. I think that's an anomaly of the current circumstances in our country. But we do know that our parks and places are more popular than ever. And matter of fact, a lot of our national parks have had so much participation and attendance at them that you now have to book entry in order to get into them so that the land isn't damaged from overuse. And I was shocked to hear that. I was out in Colorado, tried to get into Rocky Mountain National Park, had not made a reservation, and I had to turn around and leave. So that was a new circumstance for me, but it is something that's happening at many of our national parks to protect them from overuse.
Muito bem, muito obrigado, Dr. Joanne. Provavelmente uma última ou penúltima.
Thank you so much,
questão.
Professor Joanne. I think we have a last or second to last, and it's a question from Andre. Leisure is a priority topic in the contemporary society. Once the inequality has an impact in this issue, how can we deal with access to leisure from a social point of view? Let me know if it's clear.
Okay, I think I understand what you're asking, because it's interesting. Part of the conversation we had on a webinar yesterday was how important the social interaction is in a program or an activity. And so they were talking about programs where you might have a group of older adults who come in and do their gentle exercise or do their program or whatever it might be. Or you have a mom's group that gets together, or the learn to swim lessons, or a whole host of things. What they were talking about is the most important social side is that we need to be able to provide the opportunity for them to have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, something after the activity that helps build up that community. And one of the things that we always talk about in terms of leisure's capacity is to build social capital, to build community connections. And yet part of my research in the past has found that if you look at a lot of these big public facilities, they don't do it very well because they don't facilitate it. So if you want to make social engagement a priority, you need to design the programs to encourage that. And one of the first things I can think of is that you need to make sure that the leaders understand that that's part of what they're trying to achieve. That the leader is designed. The leader actually, if you see someone that's new in the program and you know they just started and you've got regular people that have been around for ages, that you say, oh, hello, this is my name. I'm John, and here's a couple of people. I want to introduce, Joanne. She's new to this program, and help them become connected. And did you know that after the activity, we have a cup of coffee, come and join us at the cafe or something like that. So that it's built into the design rather than everybody rushing in to consume. Because if you want that social interaction, if you want people to make friends, and those kinds of connections, it's really important to design the programs and the activities to do it. And so I think, there's a lot more we could share on that particular topic as to how you do it, but just being able to design programs that recognize the importance of socialization and leaders of programs recognizing that that's part of their role.
Muito bem, Dr. John Tower. O tempo passou rapidamente.
Thank you very much, Professor John Tower. This conversation was so nice that time flew by, and we are 5 minutes to the end. I still have several questions, and I didn't agree with Professor Marcus, but I'm going to send this question to Professor John Tower and Professor Joanne if they could kindly answer these questions later. So now I'm going to pass the floor to Professor Marcus to close our webinar today. Professor Bramante, thank you so much for you and for our guest, Rafael, and I are so happy. We have many questions that are left for us to think about and imagine, and of course, all the studies related to leisure. But time went by, and I'd like all of you to give us your final comment so we can end our webinar in a very nice way to do it. We have free YouTube channel, so you can watch this material at a different time. So we can start with Professor Joanne, if you can give us your final comments. And we have many students here who are part of our course. If you want to register in our extension course, the keyword is leisure. So thank you, Professor Joanne and Professor John. Professor Joanne, you have the floor.
Yes, I would just like to say one more time, thank you so much for including me today. This has been very interesting for me. I've learned a lot. Dr. John Tower and Dr. Bramante and I talk all the time, but it's always interesting that we never run out of things to converse about. And I'm not surprised you have a list of questions, because we always have a list of questions. So feel free to email me with questions. I'm happy to answer them. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you in the future.
Muito obrigado, doutora Joanne. John?
Thank you, Professor
Again,
Joanne. John, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I agree with Joanne. If you've got questions, I provided my contact details because I'm willing to engage. So if you've got things that I can help you with, that's part of what I do. I'm in a position where that is part of my responsibility these days. So please do contact me with any things that I can do to help you deliver better leisure experiences for yourself and the community you're in. I think it's important for us to remember that, we're in that good news business, and what we do actually makes our communities better because it's their quality of life. And so if we can continue to have these conversations, and if what we've talked about today can act as a catalyst for one person to do something a little bit better than what they were doing before, or whatever that would be, that's a fantastic outcome. So let's keep the movement going. I'd also encourage you, if you're interested, when you join World Leisure, join the Leisure Management Special Interest Group. Joanne Bramante and I do a variety of things in that particular group, and we always welcome new members. So thank you to Uninter for inviting us here and providing all the infrastructure. And I'd also like to thank the translators who do an amazing job. I don't know how you do it. You're listening and translating simultaneously. And I only speak English, so I need you. Thanks, everybody, and have a great World Leisure evening, morning, day, or wherever you may be.
Bom, creio que ainda tenho ainda alguns segundos para agradecer.
I still have a few questions to thank you for this opportunity that Uninter provided us as LAJAO. I wanted to thank our translator. Thank you so much. And especially thank Professor Marcos, Professor Rafael for this awesome evening for the World Leisure Day. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rafael. You can say goodbye, farewell to everyone. Again, once again, thank you so much who has worked. The chat is like exploding here. So it's an awesome event. And Professor Joanne can sleep well. Dr. John can start his day. And people were really happy with this event. And I'm really happy. And I'm so glad that I was part of it. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Rafael. Thank you for your kindness and the whole technical team. It was an awesome work that we could reach this level of webinars. So I hope that we have other opportunities to talk and we can learn even more about leisure management. Thank you so much and see you guys later.